When hikers stumbled across a perfectly round pit high in the Cascades, they expected nothing more than erosion. But inside, they found Ethan Clarke, missing for 3 years. His body folded unnaturally, as if placed there. Stranger still, just above the rim of the pit, pressed deep into the soil, was a single bare footprint. Too large to be his, too wide to be human, and in Ethan's jacket pocket, a journal filled with words that made investigators' blood run cold. Before we go any further, if this is your first time here, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support means the world and helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us until the end, and if this mystery moves you, share your thoughts in the comments and pass it along to a friend. The summer of 2012 in Washington's Cascade Mountains was unusually bright, the kind of season when trails filled with weekend hikers, families, and photographers chasing wildflower blooms. But among them was someone different. Ethan Clarke, a quiet tourist in his early 30s visiting from Oregon. He wasn't a seasoned mountaineer, more of a restless traveler, the type who scribbled notes in a small leather journal and carried a second-hand camera everywhere. Locals later recalled spotting him in a diner in Skycomish, sipping burnt coffee and asking about the less crowded trails. He wanted quiet, he told the waitress, a place to breathe and maybe clear his head. She raised a brow, muttering later to a coworker, "Folks like him, they're either finding peace or running from something." Ethan checked into a cheap roadside lodge, unpacking his worn backpack. Inside, maps, trail mix, a flashlight, and a paperback novel with bent corners. No tent, no heavy gear, just the essentials. He scribbled a line in his journal that morning. "The woods are calling, and I need to know why." On July 18th, he drove his faded Subaru toward a trail that skirted steep ridges and thick forests, places locals rarely bothered with. A gas station clerk saw him buy 2 bottles of water and a lighter. She remembered him smiling faintly, then tugging his jacket sleeve nervously as if second-guessing himself. The Cascades that day were stunning. Towering evergreens swaying under clear skies, air heavy with pine and damp earth. But hikers later reported an odd silence, fewer birds than usual, and patches of forest that seemed too still. Hours passed. Ethan never returned. That evening, the lodge owner noticed his Subaru still parked outside, keys gone. By morning, the room phone rang unanswered. Housekeeping found his journal left open on the desk. The last entry: "Trail bends north. Feels heavier here. Don't know why." By the second day, whispers spread in Skycomish. Some said he'd just walked off, tired of life. Others shook their heads, insisting the Cascades had a way of taking people. Rescue crews were called, dogs brought in, and helicopters circled the ridges. But Ethan Clarke, tourist, writer, restless soul, was gone. And in his absence, the woods grew louder with rumor than with truth. When word spread that Ethan hadn't come back, volunteers gathered at dawn, their jackets zipped tight against the Cascade chill. The sheriff's office organized the first sweep, dozens of boots crunching across pine needles, dogs tugging at leashes, radios crackling through the fog. Searchers fanned out along the marked trail, calling his name. "Ethan! Clarke!" Their voices echoed against the ridges, swallowed almost instantly by the forest. By noon, a group returned shaking their heads. They'd found nothing. No footprints, no discarded pack, not even the wrapper of a trail bar. One of the older deputies muttered under his breath, "It's like the ground just ate him." That phrase spread quickly. At the diner where Ethan had last eaten, locals gossiped over pie and stale coffee. "Guy came out here alone?" one asked. "Yeah," another replied. Said he wanted quiet. A woman at the counter leaned in. "Or maybe someone lured him off that trail. You know what they say about those woods." The sheriff tried to keep things factual. Ethan was a tourist, alone, maybe lost. But beneath his calm tone, even he couldn't ignore how strange it was. Dogs brought in from Spokane tracked his scent halfway up a ridge, then stopped cold, circling and whining at the same patch of moss. No trail beyond, no sign of struggle. Just nothing. Helicopters buzzed overhead for 3 straight days, their blades chopping through clouds while spotters scanned the canopy. But the Cascades are unforgiving. Thick evergreen crowns hide everything below. By the 4th day, aerial sweeps turned up nothing. The journal Ethan had left behind became the focus. Investigators read those last words over and over. "Trail bends north. Feels heavier here." What did he mean by heavier? A change in weather? Or something stranger? By the end of the week, official search crews thinned out, resources pulled to newer emergencies. But whispers never stopped. People muttered about strange lights spotted in that area years ago, about barefoot prints seen once near the ridge, about how the Cascades didn't like to give people back. Ethan Clarke was officially declared missing, without a trace. But for those who'd searched, something hung in the silence of those woods, something that felt less like an accident, and more like a secret the forest refused to let go. 3 years passed. Ethan Clarke's name faded from the local paper, but not from whispered conversations in the Cascades. Families camping near the ridge still told their kids not to wander too far, not because of bears, but because of what had happened to that tourist. Then came the summer of 2015. A small team of hikers was charting an old, rarely used trail, one that snaked higher into the ridge, tangled in fallen branches and moss that looked centuries old. They weren't looking for Ethan, but for a better vantage point to fly their drone. That's when one of them nearly stepped into it. A pit, perfectly circular, carved into the earth like something had swallowed down into it. Its edges were lined with rocks stacked deliberately, not like a landslide, but like a mouth. And inside, a shape. When the sheriff's department returned with ropes and lights, they found the body. Ethan Clarke, or what was left of him, curled unnaturally, like he'd been folded into himself. His clothing was torn, weathered, but the journal in his jacket pocket was still intact, as if the forest had decided to preserve it. The pit itself was wrong. Too clean, too deliberate. Investigators said it was natural erosion, but the men lowering into it swore they felt cold, even in July heat. One deputy said his radio stopped working the second he crossed the rim, the static so sharp it rang in his teeth. And then there was the footprint. Just above the rim of the pit, pressed into soft earth, lay a single bare print. Not Ethan's. Too large, too wide. The toes spread almost like they'd gripped the soil. Forensics took photos, but there was nothing to compare it to. No shoe, no boot, no hiker in the area reported missing. Just that one silent mark, as if something had crouched at the edge of the pit, watching. When word got out, the community lit up with theories. At the bar, a logger told anyone who would listen, "Man didn't fall in. Something put him there. You don't stack stones around a hole like that unless it's for keeping something in or keeping it fed." Others said the bare footprint wasn't human at all, that it looked closer to a primate or something even stranger. The official report was neat. Body recovered. Cause undetermined. No foul play evident. But those who saw the site said otherwise. Ethan Clarke hadn't just vanished into the Cascades. He'd been taken by something the forest still refused to name. The Cascades were never quiet, but after the pit was discovered, a different kind of silence settled over the community. Not the peaceful hush of snow or the soft rustle of pine, but a tension that weighed on people's shoulders. When news broke that Ethan Clarke's body had been found in a stone-lined pit, the first reaction wasn't relief. It was dread. People gathered in the diner, whispering over steaming mugs, asking questions no one had answers to. "Why a pit?" one woman muttered to her friend, just loud enough for the room to hear. Why was it stacked like that? Like a grave someone wanted to hide? By evening, the story had spread beyond town. News crews set up cameras on the roadside, shining harsh lights into the tree line. But locals refused to give them the sound bites they craved. They shook their heads, muttered, "City folks don't understand," and went on their way. The sheriff's office tried to frame it as closure. A tragic accident, a tourist who had strayed too far. But deputies who were actually at the pit couldn't keep their unease out of their voices. One was overheard outside the courthouse telling a colleague, "That footprint wasn't normal, man." "You can't tell me it was." Some older residents dusted off stories they'd long stopped telling. Legends of strange shapes moving between the trees. Hunters who swore they saw eyes reflecting light where no animal should be. Hikers who heard footsteps that didn't match their own. For Ethan's family, it was worse. His sister Margaret flew in from Ohio to collect his belongings, and she demanded to see the site herself. Standing at the rim of the pit, she pressed her palm against the stones, shivering despite the summer air. Later she told a reporter, it felt like the ground was breathing, like something down there was alive. Authorities sealed the site quickly after that, citing safety concerns, but that only fueled rumors. Why close it off if it was just erosion? Why not fill it in? Why not let people see for themselves? In the weeks that followed, tourists stopped booking cabins near that part of the ridge. Locals kept their kids close. And for every night the wind pushed through the trees, people swore it carried a low sound, like a hum or a sigh, rising from where the earth had opened its mouth. When the pit was sealed off and reporters finally pulled away, many assumed the story would fade. But it didn't. It couldn't. Because tucked inside Ethan Clarke's weather-beaten jacket was something that refused to let the mystery rest: his journal. The pages were stiff, stained by damp, but the writing inside was surprisingly clear. Ethan had recorded his hikes in detail, the ridges he crossed, the streams he drank from, the birds he spotted. But the last entries told a very different story. One page, dated just a week before he disappeared, mentioned a sound he couldn't place. Like someone whistling, but it didn't stop. Followed me for 2 miles. Another entry said he saw bare prints in the mud, not boots, not shoes, just feet. The final pages were nearly frantic, his neat handwriting dissolved into jagged scrawls. It's watching me. I hear it when I stop. I don't think I'm alone out here. The last line, smudged and shaky, simply read, "If you find me, don't look for it." When investigators read those words, some dismissed it as paranoia. But those who stood at the pit, who saw the stones arranged like careful hands had built them, couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan's warnings weren't delusions. They were breadcrumbs, left behind by a man who knew something was following him. The footprint remained the most disturbing piece. Larger than any man's, its shape didn't fit human or animal. Experts called it inconclusive. Locals called it a sign. Around town, whispers grew bolder. That thing's still out there. It wasn't finished. Ethan's case never reached true closure. His family buried what was left of him, but even his sister admitted the service didn't feel final. "We laid him to rest," she said, but the story didn't rest with him. For years after, hikers avoided that ridge. The pit was covered, but people swore the earth didn't forget. One hunter claimed he found a fresh bare print near the same trail in 2017. Another said his dog refused to walk past the marker stones, whining until he turned back. Ethan Clarke's name became a warning in the Cascades. Parents told their kids not to wander, not just because of cliffs or bears, but because the woods remember. And for those who listened closely, when the wind cut low through the trees, some swore they could still hear it, a faint whistle circling the ridges, waiting for the next soul to step too far from the path. The Cascades never gave answers, only scars, silence, and a pit that should have never been found. Ethan's body was found, but the Cascades never gave back the truth. The pit was sealed, the footprint dismissed, and his journal buried with him. Yet whispers remain, of something still moving between the ridges, waiting. If this story pulled you in, don't let go just yet. Like, share, and subscribe for more haunting mysteries. Because the next disappearance I'll tell you about may be even darker, and the forest might not be done claiming lives.